You're listening to MedX, the Medical Extrusion Podcast, presented by US Extruders. Extrude with confidence, custom extrusion equipment designed for you and your application.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the MedX Podcast. Today's guest is Jason Scherer, founder and CEO of VitaTek, the largest private medical device manufacturer in the state of Minnesota. Jason will share with us all the vertically integrated capabilities that he and the team at VitaTek have brought in-house to support their customer base. Enjoy. Hey, Jason, welcome to the MedX Podcast.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. There's a lot going on. I'm really excited about our conversation. I've been following you on LinkedIn, all the capabilities that you're bringing in-house. You're closing big deals. You know, about a month ago or so, you signed you're the largest contract, right? Ever for VitaTek. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to get right into it and get a little bit about your background, but mostly I want to understand, the experiences. You have a really good story to tell, and those experiences that you've had throughout your medtech career, how they've kind of set you up for what you're doing today at VitaTek.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to go into it. Yeah, thanks for the platform and the time. So 20 years medical device experience. I spent 10 years with Olympus all over the country. I was in Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, and then up in northern New England. I had the really cool opportunity when I was in northern New England to have a ton of different product lines and really had the opportunity to build out my own team and just had a blast doing it. About 9 years ago, I was introduced to this small group of individuals. They went into struggling medical device companies and they would fire some of the sales team, fire some of the marketing team. They would insert in our team. And then what they would do is, do high growth strategy to make sure that they turned around the medical device company and sold it. The project that I specifically joined was a company called New Wave Medical. It was microwave ablation for liver, lung, kidney, and bone cancer, primary and metastatic. We had really cool targeting software. The company was led by Dan Sullivan, who's legendary in the space. And within a very short period of time, the company was sold to J&J for $350 million. I then our team got hooked up with Dr. Fred Moll, inventor, founder of Intuitive Surgical, the Da Vinci robot. And Fred was starting one of his 6 medical device startups, one of them being RS Health. And RS was a really cool dual lumen robotically controlled Xbox controller, actually, platform that could target lung lesions smaller than 2 millimeters. What was really fun about that particular project is we were the first ones in, and within a very short period of time, the company ended up exiting for $5.6 billion. And at that point in time, I said to myself, well, shoot, I know how to sell. I know how to market. What I want to do now is I want to make my own medical devices. So I went around town here in Minnesota. I got a bunch of proposals from other R&D shops here within Minnesota. And then I realized as I started paying my own money, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 out the door every month, my wife started getting really frustrated with me, getting to the point that, she's like, hey, you have to find a better way to do this because they're just going to bleed you dry of money for, 2-3 years at a time. So at that point in time, I went to my partner, Rich, and we started Vita Group about 4 years ago, October 1st. Our company does it a bit differently. What we do is we provide 5 different deliverables to our initial entrepreneurs, universities, small medical device companies, and sometimes individuals. But we do 5 things for them. We do in IP analysis, aggressive and defensive. We do regulatory analysis, understanding what the regulatory pathway is, who's going to do the regulatory testing, how much the regulatory is going to cost. We do COGS analysis of, hey, what the development cost is going to be, what the BOM cost is going to be at the end of the particular project. We rapid prototype the particular project every single week, and we hold meetings with our clients every single week. And then we have CPT code software that we use Clairvoyance and sometimes AcuityMD, and we do 6-month trailing CMS data that gives us CPT code, DRG code, Q code, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance. So we bundle this all up into a 6-month program, a nice little business plan, and we give it to our clients so that they can have a really good blueprint roadmap of how to get their product to commercialization. We've done 52 medical devices to date, have gone through our process. We have 9 medical device companies that we've bought outright and that we own. 2 medical devices are FDA cleared and in the marketplace right now. We then realized that we were spending $40,000 a month on FDA regulatory people. So we hired our own regulatory team in-house. And then we realized that we were spending millions of dollars on contract manufacturing. So we then decided to merge with another contract manufacturer. And the great thing about this contract manufacturer, they make about 120 medical devices for about 70 medical device companies. The other thing that's great about them is they own a tool and die mold shop. The tool and die mold shop, typically what happens in the US right now is that you will order your die mold from India or China. It takes about 6 to 9 months. And then when it comes back to the US, you always need to do revisions and dial in the die mold because, again, it's just not always perfect. That's just not how it works. So with us, we can do die molds in about 14 days, and we can do revisions and repairs in about the same amount of time. So we can be very, very quick on the turnarounds. The other thing that's cool about merging with a contract manufacturer and a tool and die mold shop, and then have a regulatory team, is then we said, okay, what is the last remaining piece of the puzzle? And we realized sterilization houses are a big problem.
To say the least.
So we went and spent some serious money, and we now have ETO sterilization in-house. So the fun thing about this right now is that we're the largest private medical device manufacturer in the state of Minnesota. We have 3 locations. We have about 70 employees, and then we are the only ones in the US that do everything A to Z in-house. And so it's really fun when we go and quote or do a proposal for medical device clients. As you can imagine, we quote out all 6 of the buckets, and we'll give that proposal to the medical device client, and then they'll typically ask, okay, well, who's your competitor? And we'll say, okay, go and get this, these 6 buckets, and then coming back, combine it, plus, and there you go. There's your quote. The other thing to make note of this is when you choose 6 different companies and 6 different individuals, what ends up happening is that if something goes wrong along the continuum process, everyone, it's not their problem. It's the other person's problem. Right? It always happens that way. So it's nice when you work with one company such as us, because it's our problem. And then what's really fun about that, though, too, is that instead of each bucket delaying the process of development as long as they possibly can because they need the dollars, with us, we're really much aligned with our medical device clients because, hey, if we have the entire contract is just whatever, $2 million and it's for 12 months, it behooves me to get through that contract in 6 months or, as quick as we possibly can, so that I get the same contract dollars amount, but for a shorter time period.
Yeah. That's interesting. The deliverables you talked about, and you mentioned how you do a lot of work with the early stage surgeons and individuals. And in those cases, there's no revenue coming in, right? That to pay for this. it's a funding, right? Individual angel investors, whatever it might be, Series A, Series B. And if these projects drag out like they often do,
Oh yeah.
the burn rate, it's over, right?
Yeah. And you see it all the time, right? You see
Yeah.
clients that will come to us and they realize, they're like, hey, Jason, I wish I would have known about you guys 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I could have saved a ton of money if I would have known you guys. Unfortunately, 5 years ago, we were still going through struggle bus of our own, right? We're still realizing
Yep.
that there's a better way, right? So
Yeah. Jason, all these vertically integrated capabilities, in-house mold tooling, sterilization, the hydrophilic coatings that you now offer.
Yep.
This is big capital investment in equipment, process, and people.
Yep.
Right. And the model, so to speak, of build it and they will come, that doesn't usually work in private organizations or private equity. There has to be some revenue or a relationship with a customer, a pain point. Can you tell me a little bit about the mentality going into making these huge? It shouldn't be held lightly. These are big investments. Can you talk a little bit about the mentality and strategy?
Yeah. So our strategy primarily is that we are a medical device a contract manufacturer, and we have our own OEM devices. So the point is that if you want to talk about the aggregate level or the 30,000 foot level, with a typical contract manufacturer, you're always trying to get that next manufacturing job in. You can only make 20% to 30% of your margins. You can't really go above that or beyond that. And then typically it's a race to the bottom of quoting versus someone else. And then additionally, on top of that, is that you're always wondering which production line is going to turn off at which period of time, right? So it's always like this fear of the unknown. You just don't know what's going to happen. What is different about us is that we can quote out each of the different buckets. Plus, we have our own OEM devices, so that when we go and we have a low in manufacturing, we can make our own stuff, we can sterilize our own stuff, and we can sell our own stuff. So the ebbs and flows that happen very much so with contract manufacturing all the time, we can really even it out when we're doing our own medical devices. The other thing is we, to your point about, okay, let's think about how and which projects we're going to take on and how that's going to, explore that within the strategy of the business. We try and stay within the mechanical engineering, the electrical engineering type of medical devices, and then some type of catheter-based product. We really like the high complexity products. So we make an arthrectomy device, we make thrombectomy devices, laparoscopes, ultrasound devices, energy devices. So we make a lot of those high touch point, 30 plus piece items. What's really important about that is that we can do those type of things, but we also do the low touch point, simple mechanical, type of disposable devices. So it gives us a really good breadth of what to do. And then the other cool thing, Steve, that brings up to it now that I'm thinking about it is that as you have a client come in, they might not always want to start at the beginning, right? Some clients come in and they're like, hey, I'm kind of already here at phase 3. Or some come and say, hey, I'm already at phase 5, or whatever. We can kind of pick and choose and put them into the place that best fits their where they're at, instead of just being a contract manufacturer and just saying, hey, you're going to come in. No, this is where you're going to start, and you don't really have a choice. I mean, this is what we do. We're a contract manufacturer. So, yeah.
Okay. So it could be, it might not start from the get-go. It might be a transfer after some phase gate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
As people would come into us, like we had someone come into us, Steve, that was, I feel bad for the guy. So the guy calls and he's like, hey, my contract manufacturer, I just found out, I went to place my 4th order and the contract manufacturer no longer exists. It's gone. And we're like, okay. And he's like, how fast can you turn up and turn on our stuff? And we're like, okay, we can do it. Yep. Okay. We can do it in like a month to 2 months. And then we were like, okay, here's your quote, right? So here's your quote for contract manufacturing. He comes back to us again and he's like, hey, Jay, by the way, the sterilization house is telling me it's 9 months out.
Yeah.
So can you do sterilization for me too? And I was like, yep, not a problem.
Yeah.
We'll do the quote. So it's just, yeah, you can kind of get the idea.
Yeah. On one of our conversations earlier, you told me a story about how I think one of your customers decided to purchase a tool, a mold tool, overseas.
Yeah.
Maybe India, China. I can't remember. It was overseas, and it just really created a lot of headaches right in the end. And can you share that and how you kind of tied in how you're handling mold tooling in-house?
Yeah, absolutely. What is interesting is that this particular client was using a Chinese die mold shop. And so in the process of them doing that die mold, they wanted to do it because it was extremely cheap, right? Very, very inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And so they thought that they were pretty proud of themselves for doing that. Well, we, 5 months later, they contact us and they're like, hey, we're having problems right now with the particular mold. And we get into it and we start to realize, we're like, oh shoot, this device is a double mold. It's a dual mold, has an overmold capability, and it's not shooting right. And they were going to throw away the block of steel and start anew because it wasn't working at all. So we asked them to ship it back to us. First off, it goes to Texas. I don't know why it went to Texas. When it goes to Texas, finally it gets back up to us here in Minnesota. Texas, Minnesota, same thing. Mm-hmm. And so it gets back up to us, and we go and do a flow mold analysis on it. And we realized really quickly that the part was built into the die mold upside down. And so because you're trying to fill this tiny spot at the top and then hoping that the rest of the thing was going to fill, when in actuality it should be the more volume should be on top, and then the smaller amount should be on the bottom. So we then had to add in some more channels. We had to turn off some gates, add some new gates, and we had to do all this type of stuff. And we had to, it was basically every 2 days we were shooting parts, sending it back to our die mold and tool shop, having to revise it, sending it back to our shop, shooting injection molded, and going back and forth every day or two. And we ended up fixing it. And we actually have a meeting later on today with the client. They're an international client. And so, it's the findings that we're going through, and they're so happy right now that we got it. But it's just hilarious that, mold flow analysis wasn't done by the international Chinese client. Second off, they basically gave up, and they were saying that they'd have to redo the tool again. So they'd have to spend even more cost. And then the third thing is that when you are trying to problem solve something and you're not getting any feedback from your die mold and tool shop, how frustrating is that? You're like, you don't even know where to start because you have no feedback of whatsoever. When we were doing it and shooting it every other day, we were taking pictures. I was going over there, taking pictures, taking videos, putting in their slide deck. And then literally we're showing the client, every 3-ish days of, hey, this is where our progress is. I think this is where we're going to tweak it. This is where we're going to send it to. And the communication then isn't of the client being like, hey, Jay, where's my device? How's it not working? Why is the gate not working? You get into these frustration questions, I guess, because a lot of people will have those frustration questions. On the flip side, we're giving the valuable information to our client. So then it's not frustration questions. You're like, okay, I understand, right? The knowledge transfer is happening, so I'm more comfortable with the problems, right? So I understand I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Doing the podcast and putting on some of these medical processing panels and talking to people, one of the things I hear a lot, and I'm hearing some of this from you, there's a big gap between design and manufacturing, and the design for manufacturability is in collaboration, like you're talking about, form, fit, function. That needs to happen more. There's so many projects that go off schedule because of that lack of DFM up front.
Oh, you're Steve. It's if I had $1 for every time I heard that, I mean, I'd be a very wealthy individual. I mean, it's just it always happens that way where, you know, the design team is going a certain direction. They don't have the experience of the manufacturer, right? They don't have the experience of maybe the manufacturer has done these 3 ways, right, for a very long time, and they're very good at those 3-ish ways. But then this design team has no idea about that, so they're just going down a particular pathway.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have a case in point. We have a project right now where we have this particular project. I mean, Steve, it has 60 some screws, and they all take like 12 turns for each screw. So, and then the client wants it for like $20. And I was like, guys, who designed this thing?
Yeah.
60 some individual screws that you have to twist 12 times.
Yeah.
Like, how does that make sense to anyone? So, you know, now we're having to go through it again and remove as many screws as we possibly can out of the process, because it just, I mean, otherwise it makes the product not feasible. But again, it's a typical design firm versus manufacturing, right?
Yeah. Some of the tools I believe that you have in place to support that DFM and you talked about these meetings that you have weekly and all that collaboration. That's great. Some of the tools, I know you have pretty advanced capabilities related to 3D printing, and you could print multiple colors and materials. Can you talk a little bit about that as to support prototyping?
Yeah. So we have on site, we have a number of different printers. We have the new Prusa XL with the 5-head. So it gives us, you know, PLA printing with 5 different colors, which is kind of cool. We also have the J750. With the J750, if everyone's familiar with it, it's a multiple durometer, 30 million colors. It prints out stuff and a really, I mean, it's very commercial grade.
Yeah.
It has the ability to carpet print. So carpet print meaning it lays down a layer and then it UV cures, lays down a layer, UV cures. And so it's very, very fast. And then on site, we have various soldering stations over here. We have various, we can do LCD boards. We can do software for the LCD boards. And we can do other soldering applications. Like, for example, we took a ultrasound device, a tissue, a fat sensing device, a nerve sensing device, a muscle sensing device, a Doppler, and then multiple LED lights. And we took it all apart and Frankensteined it into one device in particular, and it worked. And we're super proud of this particular device. The point being is that we can do any level of that type of medical device. But mechanical is very easy, but then getting into, you know, EE or LCD screens or UI for LCD screens is pretty easy.
Okay. So we covered some of the vertically integrated capabilities, in-house mold tooling, sterilization, and I knew one of the more recent ones, which is interesting to me, is the hydrophilic coatings that you offer on an online store or a website, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how you went about that and how you started and why and what you're offering there?
So our whole the reason why I laugh is our whole story is based out of just pure frustration of working with these other companies. So we worked with all these other hydrophilic coating companies across the US and within Minnesota, and it got this point where there's 2 aspects to hydrophilic coating. You have the actual hydrophilic coating, and then you have the manufacturing process. There's 2 things. A lot of companies will just sell you the hydrophilic coating. Very few companies will do the hydrophilic coating and the manufacturing. So we got to the point where these companies were charging us $6,000 per liter, and we could basically coat 100 devices per liter. So it was getting it was getting really, really expensive. Getting like $60 per unit, and at $60 per unit, I mean, that's just a lot of that's just really, really high. So we went and we found a chemist, and within the chemist, we asked them, hey, could you create this proprietary hydrophilic coating for us? And they're like, yeah, not a problem. And they came back like 48 hours later, and they're like, hey, here's your hydrophilic coating. We're like, how did you do this so fast? Like, this doesn't, are you sure this is correct? Like, this doesn't sound right. And this particular person was like, yeah, I worked for 3M for their coatings department for a decade. And so, yeah, I know exactly what the bare minimums go into this. And so we tested it, and we're like, went through all the biocomps, and it passed flying colors. And we then realized that, okay, well, to manufacture it, we just need a couple of pieces of equipment, and then we can manufacture it. And so it's hilarious now when you think about the hydrophilic coating. I mean, it's down to, I think on the website we have it at like $600 or $700 per liter, and we're willing to reformulate to whatever a medical device company particularly needs. When we were reformulating, someone was trying to charge us $15,000 to reformulate. I mean, I think on there we have it at like $2,000 or something like that. But the point is that where there's a will, there's a way. There's way, way, way cheaper options out there. I mean, people, for all intents and purposes, don't have to use us. I mean, go and use a normal chemist, and they can get you hydrophilic coating. Everyone thinks that it's like magic sauce of whatever their hydrophilic coating is. Hydrophilic coating is like 3 things. That's it. It's just 3 chemicals. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. What about do you also provide support for the process if somebody wants to coat a balloon or like a distal end of catheter? Okay.
Yeah, we'll do all that. And what would be an ideal situation is that they come in and say, hey, we kind of have this prototype of what we want. We would like you to take it from here and, hydrophilic coated, contract manufacturing, die mold and tooling, sterilization, all the way. We're all day, every day. We'd be happy to do that. And I think that's, you touch on a point there. We, unlike other contract manufacturers, we prefer that our clients are on site. So we have offices set up on site here for medical device clients to be here. Now, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yep. Sure. Yeah. They're there.
They're there.
Which is good. Yep.
And then they're asking, why is my stuff not being worked on?
Yeah.
And why are you doing this and this? And but it's good because, that type of transparency, I think, is what should be in the medical device space. And I think more people should do that. But it's hard to have other, 20 some clients on site is really, really hard.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a lot to manage.
20 bosses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, Jason, this has been great. Appreciate your time and sharing with me and the audience, all the capabilities that you brought in-house, your background, and it's a real great success story. I look forward to continuing to follow you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to MedX, the Medical Extrusion Podcast, presented by US Extruders. Please subscribe to make sure you're getting the latest episodes. For video episodes, go to us-extruders.com/podcasts. All links are available in the show notes.